Monster Hunter Wilds is looking pretty good.
All right, so I got a ton of updates for Monster Hunter Wilds today. Over the past several weeks, we've seen the release of 2 brand new gameplay trailers, a developer recap video. There were a bunch of updates to the official website, which gave a ton more detail about the game. And out of Summer Games Fest came a ton of hands-on impressions, all of which comfortably have nudged Monster Hunter Wilds to at or near the top of my most anticipated games of 2025. Like, this is looking fantastic. Although I think the English voice acting is hilarious.
By the way, look at this female protagonist or story part. Notice how she's visibly not ugly. That alone tells me that this has a lot of potential.
Hilariously awkward, and I could do without the talking palicos. Aside from that, this game's looking pretty great. All right, so let's start things off. Beginning with those 2 new gameplay trailers, we did see some additional story stuff in there, glimpses of combat, but really these trailers give us a much better look at the mount and the various things that you can do on it. Now, the big one obviously being is
this looks pretty cool on its own.
like, yes, you can swap to an alternate weapon. We assumed as much early on, seeing the weapon mounted to the side of the mount, but now it has been confirmed. While riding, you can just pull out the second weapon and start using it, which brings me to the next big thing we learned, and that was that there's mounted combat. We saw examples of both ranged and melee options, with the character attacking with a ranged weapon from the back, and then swiping with a melee weapon, even doing a dismount attack, which was really cool to see. We can also use consumables while riding, and we can gather objects from a distance with the hook slinger. We also saw interactions with environmental objects like dropping rocks onto a pack of pursuing monsters. And lastly, we saw that you can clearly summon and jump on your mount while in the midst of combat. This happened on a few occasions throughout both trailers. So pretty cool stuff. The mount is
summoning a mount when you're in combat. Why did that sentence go out so awkwardly? I don't know. But summoning your mount while you're in combat, that's pretty cool.
Going to do like most of everything that you can do, but I mean, you can't do all your move sets. There's probably only gonna be like a handful of attacks that you can do from the back of the mount, but nevertheless, 3 new monsters got revealed.
Yeah, obviously. If you can do everything from the mount, then being non-mounted is just stupid in general because you're slower, right? So, yeah, there's going to be limitations, but still pretty cool.
Field and named. So first there is the Dasha Guma. This is that super aggressive fanged monster that's very bear-like. We see it standing up on its hind legs with a very bear stance. These look to be able to travel in packs. There was the...
I would say that looks more like a lion, and this looks more like a crocodile lizard.
Chadacabra. This was that armored frog gorilla looking hybrid with that super sticky tongue.
Oh no, yeah, this is definitely some kind of frog lizard. By gorilla, maybe. Who honestly knows? But it looks pretty cool, and that is what truly is important.
It's constantly lathering itself with. Apparently, it's got this adhesive saliva that it will use to affix stones to its forelimbs, making for stronger attacks. And then there were the Balahara. These are leviathans that live in the desert, the ones that were almost swimming through the sand. They shoot this tar-like substance. I'm assuming it slows you down, at least
this is very cool.
Damages you, and then they can create these quicksand traps, and they also appear to travel in packs. Once again, in these trailers, they also showcase their dynamic changing weather conditions with the sand and lightning storms rolling in. This is going to play a big role in the game, which we learned a bit more details about later on. We got a short glimpse of the new focus mode that gives us precise control for aiming, even for defensive and melee attacks. And then we saw a glimpse of multiplayer returning with a player shooting up an SOS flare, calling in for reinforcements, and here it was at least alluded to that we're gonna have group sizes of up to 4. This too was later confirmed in some of the coming details. All right, so next we've got the overhaul to the Monster Hunter website, which might not sound like much, but they actually give us a lot more details in their various sections. So let's take a look. So first off, there's these changing environments. So it was described here that each hunting region will feature 2 dynamically changing environments. In interviews, I've heard this referred to as the desolate and the abundant phases. So when
interesting. So that's what we saw in previous clips at the start. You could see it at the very start of the video also. I was interested, is that like a mechanic or something? And yes, it's a mechanic. Very nice.
When a region is in its desolate phase, it's going to be harsh, a bit more...
Yeah, this one. Exactly that clip right here. We have already seen that plenty of times. Very cool.
Barren, the monsters will also be more aggressively fighting as there are limited resources available. However, when it changes over to the more abundant phase, that region will then be lush, more likely to be full of plant life. Some monsters might become more docile, while new ones might appear, and also new resources will become available as the area, again, is more abundant. environment. So there's going to be new things for players to collect. Basically,
Oh, that sounds like a pretty cool game loop, you know? You play the desert in this what is it called? Time of the year, let's just say. You do it, you go to another place, the environment is different, and then you come back to the desert when it's, I don't know, summer or whatever it counts like. That could be very interesting. It just gives you another reason to come back to the previous zone and see how it's changed, and that's cool. The more time you spend in the zone, the more you kind of are familiar with it, the more you like it, the more everything. And then it changes and you're like, wow, this rock used to be right there. Ooh, that's big. But, you know, in all seriousness, that's a very cool system if done properly.
how it works is that as a region changes from one phase to another, not only will it be visually different, as we saw in that initial reveal trailer, but also the monsters, wildlife, plants, and vegetations will be changing as well. Monster herds. It's been typical in Monster Hunter games to see large packs of smaller creatures running around. Well, in Wilds, many of the larger monsters will be roaming in packs or herds as well. In addition, Wilds will be continuing and expanding upon their ecosystem mechanics with creatures fighting for territory, having particular enemies, and quarreling over food. Let's talk about the mount. Beyond acting like a transportation vehicle, this comes with a bunch of other additional useful features, many of which we covered in those initial trailers, but there's some more details here. For one, it can automatically guide you to your current objective or any location that you've marked on the map. Now, the lore reason for this is that it's got a great sense of smell, but that automatic means automatic. You pick somewhere to go, and the mount will bring you to there without you having to put any additional input. We learned this from some of the hands-on.
Black Desert Online has that, if I'm not mistaken. There are a bunch of games that do this. I wonder if this is going to be a thing that starts to slowly stick in games. Because, you know, sometimes you don't want to actually move yourself and whatnot. So this is not necessarily bad, but is this actually good? Because you're just putting in the location and then you're AFK going to it? It's hard to tell if this is going to be a huge success or not as a mechanic. Some people will like it, some people will not use it. I guess there's no harm in having it. Because again, you know, everyone's going to use it time to time. Even if they are not huge fans of the mechanic. Just because it is simple, it is easy, it saves you time, and that's kind of neat.
Impressions. I'm assuming you can override it as well, but yes, it is actually automatic. You say mount, go here, the mount just makes the trip, and you sit back and relax if you want to. They also point out that you can use your slinger and certain kinds of ammos while mounted. They specifically noted you will be able to heal yourself, do things like sharpening your weapon, and then the material gathering while on the move. And you can also stash that extra weapon in the weapon swing, as we have seen. And from what I understand, that weapon swap isn't just while on the mount, so you can jump on the mount, swap weapons, and then jump off the mount using that new weapon. I would also be curious if you can weapon swap without mounting. Like, can you call the mount but not do the mount animation and just pull the weapon off of the side of the mount? That would be cool. Don't know as of the moment. All right, the ecosystems. Yeah. So the one that we know of right now, the one that we've seen so far, is the Windward Plains. This is going to be the first new hunting locale we'll visit. All of the gameplay that we've seen has been from this one region. Sandy deserts, swaying grasslands, and twisting rock formations make up just some of the areas we'll explore here, and only some, because these maps are at least twice the size of those in World. The 14 iconic weapons are coming back, all 14. They're returning. There's going to be some new features and moves and attacks for every single one of those weapon types, but if you like any one of the base 14, yes, they're all going to be here. The focus mode, they describe this a little more. So this is a new feature that will let you manually aim any weapon in the game. This can be used to target monster weak points, more precisely aim special attacks, or the position of a defensive mood. So it's like a reticle that pops up on screen, and it just lets you, not just for ranged weapons. This is something that you could do with melee weapons, or ranged weapons, right? It's just precise aiming across the board. Pretty interesting. Not exactly sure what to make of this, like aiming with a reticle for melee attacks. It might be a little, I don't know, we'll have to see until we actually get our hands on it. And then the slinger, it is back as covered. You can fire rocks, seeds, and other ammo, or use it to trigger objects in the environments like those falling rocks. The new big update though is the hook slinger, and this is what allows you.
Yeah, all these combat changes are going to be huge hit or miss, but just by description, you can't really tell if it's going to be good or bad. It completely depends on how they implement it and how it feels and whatnot.
to gather materials from a distance as seen in the trailer. So yeah, like I said, a lot more specific granular details in this updated version of the website. Love to see it. Lots of cool stuff in there. As for that developer update, like overview video, frankly, that was pretty light on details. In fact, they really didn't say much of anything new. Rather, they just overviewed all of the basics that we've seen from the trailers. They said, hey, you know, we've got new monsters, we've got the changing environment, we got a mount, and Palicos talk. Please, God, know why. They explain why. It's actually not the worst idea. The voice for the cat, I just want to hear them meow, right? And they also said they're hard at work on the game and we'll have more details and information to share in the future. That said, man, we got a lot of...
So far, so good, honestly. So far, definitely so good. This is more impressive than, well, 95% of games that have been revealed so far this year, honestly. So, big hopes.
Of new good info from Summer Games Fest. Various outlets and creators who attended the event got to sit down and watch a live playthrough demo of Monster Hunter Wilds in action. From this, quite a few impressions came out. There were bunches of articles and videos. I would like to highlight a few of them that basically had the most information in them and share that with you. So first off, we have got Maximilian Dude in his coverage. We basically got a step-by-step walkthrough of a full hunt versus the new Doshaguma monster from start to finish. This was golden. My man did us a solid. So he said that first they began in the social hub / town. A lot of what was in the town in Monster Hunter World appeared to be here as well in terms of the features and the various NPCs and vendors. Now, when starting the hunt, this looked to be way more streamlined than World. Rather than like walking to a job board and then picking a job and then going to a cutscene and loading into a map, you simply open up your map and you click on the monster you want because you're going to see them roaming around. So the map was extremely detailed. It showed all of the flora as well as the creatures, the monsters moving around in real time in the overworld. And then by...
Interesting. That's an interesting choice, just to constantly show all the creatures that are currently hopping around the world and whatnot. It's kind of cool. It's kind of good, but I wonder, do you have to, in actuality, first find the creature and like figure out where does it like to roam, what does it do, and things like that. I wonder if there's any kind of exploration aspect about the sword. You know, you just instantaneously see everything and, you know, off to the races from there. I wonder.
By selecting a monster, it automatically pulls up all currently available quests. You then pick the quest or the hunt that you want the rewards of, and that's it. The quest is active. You can summon your mount at that point and head out into the overworld to start your hunt. Everything is seamless. It's no more job board plus picking from the list of hunts and then loading in. No, open your map, click on the...
That's cool. That's really good. Seamless is nice.
The monster, pick the hunt.
But to be fair, if a game is good, a loading screen is not that problematic. Let's face it, this is not Starfield.
You want, and then close the map and hang out in town for a bit. Ride around to pick up some herbs or go straight towards the hunt. However you want to do it, it's totally up to you. So while they were riding out, he mentioned as they were heading towards the Doshaguma hunt, the player that was playing was collecting resources using that new hook slinger to pull it towards him. It was also then where they started explaining that the map sizes in Wilds are roughly 2 to 3 times bigger what we saw in Monster Hunter World. So take the size of the maps you remember from World and double and or triple it. And it's all seamless and connected to the town. It's just crazy, dude, right? On top of that, they also have several layers of verticality. So just like all around, everything about this game looks much bigger and more expansive on top of being more seamless. There were multiple entry points into every region as well, and this was really cool. So at one point in the demo, they actually entered the plains. Instead of leaving through the main gate, they basically left through the side section of town. The mount climbed up across this mountainous area, like scaling rocks and cliffs, and then jumped off into a glide that the player could then control. So instead of walking at the front gate, the mount said, well, there's like a set points as far as I'm aware, but the mount went up the cliff and jumped off into a glide, and then from that glide you could kind of go where you want, or you could let the mount auto move towards your objective if that's what you want as well. That's the other option. They also...
So this is potentially when you want to auto move from the village, it's going to take a specific mount shortcut or something like that. Very interesting.
Cover the new updated camping system. So when you open the map, there's actually going to be select areas, regions within the zone that are highlighted in this glow, and that glow signifies an area where you can set up a base camp anywhere within that region. So it's going to be much wider rather than just having these exact specific location spots that you have to go to and then activate, and then a camp is there permanently in in this exact one location. You can place a camp anywhere within these highlighted areas, which give players far more options as to where the camp goes. They showed it in action. Basically, you move to the highlighted area. Once you find a spot you like, you select it, and then palicos show up and they quickly build a camp, and then it's a functioning camp, just like it was in World. These act as checkpoints, as fast travel spots. However, they did note that these mobile camps can be destroyed by monsters, so you're gonna have to pay attention to make sure no big behemoths walk through and trample it, essentially. Now, eventually, after they were...
That sounds a little bit questionable, though. You make a camp and then you need to protect it because a monster is coming towards it. It makes sense, but is it gonna be annoying? Is there gonna be a pop-up? Oh, your camp is gonna get destroyed by a larva. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's decent. Well, they're probably not gonna do anything stupid, so I'm assuming it's gonna be decent.
We're done doing some exploring and explaining of these different systems. They finally tracked down the Dosha Guma and started fighting it, and Max had a few notes from this fight. He said that mounting is back. You can mount onto monsters, slashing away at them, eventually getting a big topple attack. There was also new topple attack animations for every weapon. There's new sneak attacks, like in World and stuff. You could sneak around and crouch and be undetected and then like get a surprise attack, but it's an actual mechanic now. So if you sneak up to a monster and you remain undetected the whole time, once you get close enough, now a new pop-up icon will appear. If you activate, gives you this massive surprise stealth attack damage bonus, right? So instead of like sneaking and then setting up your own bonus, maybe throwing down a barrels and charging up an attack, there's actually a sneak attack mechanic if you remain undetected.
That's very cool. I like that. I'm a fan of stealth games in general, so obviously big thumbs up from me.
In the game, it's just something that you can just do. He mentioned seeing the fact that you could jump off and immediately attack, and we did see that in the trailers with that, what I would call like a dismount attack. And he made note of the clash attacks, so depending on the weapon that you're using, you can actually clash with monsters. We saw this in the trailer with the hunter holding their sword in the monster mouth. That's not just a...
Yeah, that seemed a little bit... Yeah, this didn't seem like just a rando cutscene or whatever to me. This seemed like an actual thing that you can do in game. Because if this was a cutscene, I mean, look at the look. Yeah, this is not good enough for a cutscene. Okay, this is probably real in-game stuff. Like a quick time event, probably.
Holding their sword in the monster mouth. That's not just a cinematic, that is a mechanic. It's a clash mechanic. If you get into a clash phase, it's like a duel, and if you win, you're gonna end up doing some big damage against them. And they say that as it happens, like you're fighting in the normal perspective with the camera behind your hunter, right? You're doing your thing. If you enter clash mode, the camera actually zooms in to that cinematic looking perspective with you seeing your weapon jammed into their mouth. And then I'm assuming there's some like hit X as fast as you can, and if you do it better than the monster, you win the clash and you get that extra damage. Something like that, I presume anyways. Now, as the fight was going on, he mentioned that packs of smaller Doshiguma started running around, forming a herd with the alpha, because as we mentioned, now these larger monsters can travel in packs, in herds. This herd, then, they had to separate the alpha, because the alpha is the one that they were hunting. They had to separate it from the pack, and they did this using various field traps. So there were vines that you could knock off trees to pull some of the smaller ones away. There were spiky bushes that would slow monsters to pull them away. But then, as they kept moving, they eventually moved into the sand dunes areas, and while they were walking into a valley in the sand dunes,
Now, this does not sound appealing in my honest opinion. It's not the worst, it's not that bad, but this does not sound that appealing, because think about it. You want to hunt a specific monster? There's going to become a time where the alphas are going to probably be the only reason you want to hunt a specific monster. And the small ones are not going to be worth your time. And you're going to end up with potentially situations where, oh, there's an alpha. Cool. I want to hunt it. But it's surrounded by 10 things, and then you need to, like, set up or, lure it for, like, 5 minutes straight and do stuff. It sounds like something that's going to get really tedious, honestly. It's a cool mechanic that an alpha gets a herd around it, because, that's how nature works, honestly, in a lot of cases, even in real life. But at the same time, it does sound a little bit tedious.
All of a sudden, those Balahara popped up, those like sand lizards, right? They popped up, they started swirling around and creating a vortex of quicksand, and that vortex sucked all of these smaller Doshiguma in. The alpha clawed his way out, and the player continued fighting them. Now, I am certain that this is like a set area, right? It's gonna be like, here's the vortex area. If you bring enemies here, then the what are they called? The sand lizards are going to come in and they're going to make a vortex, or maybe they can do it. It's not guaranteed, but either way, I'm assuming this isn't just something that can happen anywhere within the desert, but regardless, it's a cool additional mechanic.
One of the things that we saw, it was a moment without a cutscene, a moment where the person playing fell into the sand trap. I think that is something that can happen any moment, that the sand lizards start doing it. But is there a bigger scripted event around it? Probably, could be.
Mechanic, and I assume other things like this throughout that map and the other maps are going to be present that you can lure packs into to separate the packs from the alpha that you're trying to hunt. He made note that generally combat looked and felt grounded and slow-paced along the lines of World. Also said that during the hunt, that's when the sandstorm started rolling in that we've seen in the trailers. You could see it coming from a distance. It then quickly engulfed the area, darkening the sky, changing the whole color palette of the region. And then lightning strikes started happening all around. This created new hazards. Monster behavior changed. Monsters were getting struck by lightning. The player could get struck by lightning. So the fight continues. More monsters showed up, including that crazy lizard dragon from the trailer. The player lured the Doshiguma towards the dragon's den, and then they got into a turf war, fighting each other for a while. While that was happening, the storm then cleared up, and with it, and this is super cool, as the storm left, it actually swept away a lot of the sand from the desert region and revealing underneath it a ton of plant life. Max said it felt like they were sort of moving.
Oh, so this is how I was confused about this, because we have seen this also. I was confused. It just changes like that? I guess it almost makes... well, if you're gonna have different biomes in a single zone, I guess this is the best way to do it. Not the biggest fan, could have maybe been done in a slightly better way, but hey, it has to be done in some way, and well, at least this is not the worst one.
Into a spring season, more wildlife started showing up, and as we learned, other new resources are also available as well. The player then called in an SOS with a flare. 3 other players showed up, although this was AI in the presentation. Eventually, the monster got low enough that it ran back to heal. They followed it, tossed a few barrels, because you can now pick up and throw barrels, aim it at specific spots, roll it rather, weaken it further, and they finally took it down. So once it was dead, carving is back. Of course, it's Monster Hunter, so you carve for its various parts. It's actually got an animation now. Instead of walking through the monster, you actually stand on top of it and do the carving. And once the hunt was finished, a pop-up appeared saying, hey, you completed your hunt, here's your rank, here's how you did. But there wasn't any loadout, because remember, everything is seamless now. You weren't teleported back to town, you were still just chilling out in the open world. In fact, Max said everything that he saw was completely seamless. There were no loading screens ever, starting from being in town, opening the map, selecting the hunt.
In a game like Monster Hunter, I would say that seamless actually is probably better than in a lot of other games, just because it adds so much to the feeling of what you are doing. Seamless is obviously better always than loading screens, but in a game like Monster Hunter, in a system like this, that I think that adds double the value.
Leaving town, exploring, killing the monster, and then just freely continuing to walk around. At that point, they could go back to town if they wanted, they could start another hunt, they could go around collecting resources, no jarring loading screens in the transition. Fully open world Monster Hunter game is what we're getting. It's what we sort of presumed might be happening from those initial trailers and the setting that they were making, but to have it confirmed, man, I can't wait, dude. It sounds so good. A couple of other key takeaways and notes that Max had included. He said that this was his game of the show. He thought it looked amazing. There were some performance issues, although it's worth noting they have a year to iron those out, fortunately. Overall, though, despite some performance issues, he said overall it looked quite polished, very next gen. Great animations for the hunter, the monsters, the riding, the mount, the attacks. Everything looked top notch. He made note of dynamic music that would change depending on what was happening. So there'd be basic environmental music, and then music during a chase, and then music during combat. Super
good. That's honestly important, and I think this is honestly it. Nothing else worth to talk about. I think. Let's see.
No additional action needed from the player other than picking your hunt. Your mount just is going to start. That will be really cool. It will add quite a lot to the immersion and making the world feel. And they intend to deepen that concept with this stuff and many others here in Wilds. They were also told that they have made playing through the story in multiplayer a lot more convenient in Wilds, but you still won't be able to play perfectly in sync together throughout the entire story, as there are specific beats
Oh, okay. That's multiplayer. Well, better multiplayer is always good. So yeah, Monster Hunter Worlds, Wilds. I want to say Worlds constantly. Monster Hunter Wilds, looking good. Looking honestly as a must play. One of the most exciting games that we have honestly had in a while, probably. Forge Gaming, bye bye.